Thank you, everyone. I think I had the same cab journey on Friday night from here, but as you can see from the photo, we had our event here on Thursday, so it's great to be back and help Nicole and Gemma out today. If you look at technology and the way it's disrupting most industries today, it's all about experiences, and the travel and tourism sector is probably one of the lucky sectors where this disruption can play to its benefit. If you look back at experiences that sell, travel and tourism is rife for that to happen. If you look at what Paul's just described, it's all about driving that experience into the audience so that they can engage with your product. If you look at what we do at Microsoft, we are starting to get involved with augmented reality. We have some people here that are talking about virtual reality. That's a bit of yesterday's technology, but augmented reality is going to be the future. So we've just done a 2.5-month project with the Dubai Tourist Authority using HoloLens. Are any of you familiar with HoloLens? Yeah, I know you've, yeah, okay. So HoloLens is a detachable headset which is built so it's completely standalone and you wear it like a visor. You see through glass panels and it projects holograms into your eye line. So you don't get the same sickness as you do with virtual reality because it doesn't play on your reptilian brain, it doesn't mess up your senses. So you're just seeing projected, augmented holograms in front of your eyes as you sort of focus through the glass. What that enables you to do is blend reality with new reality. So with Dubai, what we were working on is effectively, who uses Viator here? Anyone use Viator? No? Okay. So that's a couple of services there where people walk you around cities and they point out different landmarks to you. The same thing we're doing in Dubai, where you can put the visor on and you can wander around Dubai, and as you look around Dubai, it will sense where you are in the space, and it will then project the hologram of what's going on and interacting with that building, with that setting, with that location. So it's really quite cool. They did pay us an awful lot of money for that, so it's not cheap. But augmented reality, once it becomes a staple in the market, which will be probably in 2 to 3 years' time, you can forget your smartphone. So in 3 to 5 years' time, the smartphone that you have today will be changing. So the screen that you carry, you will not interact with your finger. You will interact with your hand, doing different signs, and you'll interact with your eyes. So that's what's coming. So travel and tourism is going to be absolutely perfect for this when you start to do that experiential sales process. Obviously, we've brought Glyssa through our Accelerator. Chad is also CEO of Firefly, who's been through our Accelerator and graduated out the other side. He is starting to now put together those initial steps into that augmented reality and starting to do experiences and sell products and services in the tourism business via that. So thanks very much. Good luck, Chad. Over to you.
Thanks. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. So yeah, as we jump into this, before we get all Jetsons and start talking about the future of travel, I thought it would be actually interesting to see, well, kind of how'd we get here? And by no means, I'm no historian, so I've kind of done this through the guise of looking at economic stages. So let's take the first stage, and we think about commodities. And we, as a human animal, we've been actually traveling forever, but we did it for a very different reason. It wasn't about leisure at that point in time. It really was about, I don't want the lion to eat me. And how do I provide for my family? And somehow out of Africa, we've gone on to inhabit all land mass that's possible. That was kind of the first stages of how travel happened. And then about 1,000 years ago, we look at this next economic stage around goods. And this is really about empire building and how we lay out the ability to set up trade routes. And during this period of time, there was kind of a privileged few who got to travel. Those were the plunderers and the pillagers, your Marco Polos, your Lewis and Clarks, and all those sorts of folks. Small number of people, but those were the people who were really doing the bulk of the traveling. Only recently have the sort of notion of leisure travel really started to frame, and that's that economic stage of services. And so that's the dawn of air travel. In 1914, the first commercial flight took off with one person on it, and folks have been sort of going around and traveling ever since. And governments have been instantiating, public holidays. And this is the travel that we're a little bit more familiar with, is how I go off for leisure and actually explore and have an adventure. And then the next economic stage is this whole notion about the experience economy. And that was, kind of out of the ashes of sort of the hippie evolution into India. People started saying, I don't necessarily want to go to a canned resort or a hotel someplace. I want to get deep into a particular experience. So how do I, travel in a taxi all the way around the world and get embedded into this more experiential sort of thing? That's Tony and Maureen. They started Lonely Planet, and that's where your Gap Year came into. And then, this has been the last sort of 50 years of travel. And now we start looking at today. And this is where the conversation thread of kind of the Internet of Beings. And what I'm going to coin is a new sort of economic stage of magic. And magic kind of comes a hat tip to Arthur C. Clarke, where basically, any advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And we're starting to reach that precipice with things like HoloLens and the amount of computing power that we have in these overly connected world today to offer new interesting things. There's a couple cool startups that are doing that. There's a couple here today. There's What 3 Words. So their magic is that I can have my buddy. They're on later. Yep. So exactly. So I can meet my buddy, at a fishing lake, but because they've basically gridded out the whole entire planet by 3mm squares, and they know where I am, and they can kind of help me with that. Or there's a cool company called Porter, which allows me to basically, at my home, take my bag and have it magically appear in my destination at my Airbnb. Or there's a great little kind of IA bot called Lola, which stands for longitude and latitude, and that's where I can have a normal sort of conversation about booking a hotel, and this piece of technology does that. This is the space now where I think is pretty interesting, and that's where Firefly is looking to play, is how do we sort of augment this technology around people to kind of give a deeper sort of level of this experience economy. So I tend to think the future's kind of now. What is the future? Who knows? If the Elon Musks and the Bransons of the world have their way, we might be doing selfies on Mars. But what's that? All right, well, all right, fair enough. So how do we get to this piece of magic? So everybody realizes the supercomputer in your pocket is pretty much the enabler for all this stuff. But this was one of those things that sort of just crystallized it. I think it's kind of interesting. So in 1990, there was this machine called the Cray 2 for a cool $32 million. You could essentially buy the supercomputer. It took up a whole warehouse floor. 20 years later, fast forward, for $400, you pick up Steve Jobs' 4th generation of the iPhone, and that effectively has the same computing power as that Cray 2. That's amazing, and that's only accelerating faster and faster. So we've got this sort of smartphone, but in reality, our apps are kind of dumb. So they're not as smart as they could be, given all the information and personal details they know about me and all the interconnectedness that we have. It's a pity that these things actually aren't working a little bit harder than they are. Not only are they kind of dumb, but there's also too damn many of them. So when I'm traveling, I'm putting pictures up on Instagram, and I'm probably getting some advice from Twitter. I'm journaling some of this stuff in Path, and then maybe send a postcard to mom through TouchNote. But none of these things really know that much about me, and they don't really know anything about each other. So that's where, again, this whole Internet of Being starts to come into fruition. It's how do we start thinking about technology enabling us, being a little bit more intelligent, and actually having technology get the hell out of the way and enabling us to do some stuff that's a little bit more interesting. So what's the opportunity? So the opportunity for Firefly, and the thing that we're excited about, is really kind of 3 things. It's really about insights, it's about context, and it's about relationships. And I'll kind of walk through that a little bit. So when you think about insights, again, as a traveler, I know a crap ton about this person because I have their device and I know their basic demographics. And through our application, we're going to sort of playfully ask them questions and understand them on an attitudinal level. But I also know a ton of details about what they're actually doing because we can actually track that. And so we know a lot of the behavioral stuff. So in one sense, they may say they're all about museums, but at the end of the day, they're really at the pub every Friday. But that's fascinating details, and so how do we take that and start to do something interesting? And then you take places, and places isn't just an address on a particular map. It has a context. It's an ecosystem in and of itself. So when I look at a place and I try to figure out what is the type of a place, how far is it from me? I'm vegetarian, so does it help me there? What's the weather right now? All these sorts of things we can start to on-demand get a command of and have some real understanding of what that actual context is at that place. And then lastly, you think about relationships, and that comes into where on this place people that I know have been, or who wants to go, or who's there right now. or leveraging, again, the big data of people like me have traveled to this place so we can start to make some smart, intelligent inferences off the back of that. So when you start wrapping all of these three elements of insights, context, and relationship, you start to get what we kind of refer to as that magic, and you can really start to open up some doors. So that's where Firefly comes into the picture. And so our goal is to illuminate journeys, and we're doing that through kind of 4 different key ways. So the first one is around plan. So planning is about asking the who, what, when, where, and why. And this is, again, that sort of attitudinal aspect. And how do we gamify that system and start to understand people on an intimate level a little bit better? The next step is about when somebody's actually in a destination, how do we guide them? And so it's about how do we give them tailored, sort of personalized, take your Lonely Planet, cut it up into little bits that actually represent the things you're actually interested in. And that's what we want to expose and kind of have people have access to. Then thirdly, which I wish you had on your trip, was how do we journal that? So we use GPS, and we lay a little trail over a map, and it becomes this story narrative of where we hang the whole entire thing in this sort of context of a mapped journal, where during that you can actually take moments and pictures and weather and all these other elements that glue together in this linear sort of storytelling mechanism. And lastly, because everything's in the cloud and digital and nothing's freaking tangible anymore, how do we take these things and actually turn it into a real life object or a beautiful poster or a photo book or something you put in your room, and then you can have a conversation and share that story. So that's essentially what we're doing at Firefly. Appreciate you for letting me babble on. These are the things we're working with and playing with, and if you have any questions, feel free to come and grab me later.